You are tuned in to the Fowl Weather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Welcome to another episode in the Young Waterfowl Professional Series. All of us in the profession of waterfowl and wetland science, conservation, and management came from somewhere. These are the stories of young, passionate conservationists that have made their passion for the ducks into a career. All right, boy, oh boy, do we have an excellent guest for you today. We welcome Ryan Askren. Ryan works to promote science-based waterfowl management on the landscape through Five Oaks' research and education program near Stuttgart, Arkansas. He's principal investigator on several mallard movement ecology projects and research related to bottomland hardwood regeneration with the goal of improving our understanding of waterfowl-habitat relationships to better inform management. So a very applied dude here. I also know Ryan's a passionate waterfowler and spectacular photographer as well. So now that I boosted his ego, we welcome Ryan to the Fowl Weather Podcast Young Waterfowl Professionals Series. Thanks for being with us, Ryan.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Dr. Schumer. Appreciate it. Thanks for the ego stroking too.
Hey, we were just talking before, we started to record about how we've done just this really good job. There was a call to action a while ago. We had a lot of students coming through university programs that weren't really focused on waterfowl anymore. And we didn't have a lot of waterfowl professors like myself. And we've really boosted that quite well. And you're kind of a product of that generation. I'd say we're in a lot better space with a number of people out there working for refuges, working for places like Five Oaks, state agencies that have gone through programs that are waterfowl and wetlands focused, and kind of from that hunter conservationist perspective, right? Great, all the diversity, animal diversity, plant diversity, things that we focus on. But we also have this duck hunting community that we continue to need to serve as well. And for a while, universities, I feel like, abandoned that for a while. And then increasingly, we've seen programs grow. And you're actually kind of, I would say, a product, of that. But tell me, how you not like, hey, I was born in a marsh, like not all the way back to the beginning, but there could be a single event or like an accumulation of events that really got you to want to pursue a career in waterfowl and wetlands. So Ryan, what was your inspiration for all of this?
Yeah, going all the way back, I was not born in a marsh. I was born in town, but yeah, just fell in love with the marsh, fell in love with waterfowl, with birds, the incredible wetland kind of ecosystem, and through high school, I wanted to get out of Iowa and wanted to go on an adventure. So I found a volunteer position through Delta Waterfowl, working for the Canadian Wildlife Service up at Carrick Lake for Dr. Ray Alsaskis. Volunteered, and for whatever reason, they took me as a high school student.
As a high school student?
As a high school student, yeah, between my junior and senior year of high school.
Wow.
And that really, that set me on this trajectory. I worked with some incredible people up there that led to kind of the next opportunities. And one of them said, hey, I heard, Stevens Point's a great natural resource undergraduate program. And, that can't be too far from home, but out of state, far enough away from home. I said, you should look into going there. And I applied without even visiting, accepted. And I didn't go up there till like the week before classes started. So yeah, that's what, kind of led me down this path, made me realize that this was a viable career option.
Yeah,
I knew I loved being outside and working in wetlands, and I just didn't realize this was even the thing.
And then so you did a master's degree and then a PhD as well, so you just couldn't stop. Was that, like, I told people the other day, I was in this meeting with a postdoc, another full professor, and a grad student that we're co-advising, and I don't know how it came up. Well, we were trying to convince the student to go do a PhD, right? And I'm like, Elsa is a student's name. I'm like, Elsa, like, don't let, these other folks like force you into doing that. Like, this stuff has to happen organically. Like, I didn't even want to go to college. Like, I was going to go into the Army, and then somehow I ended up going to forestry school. And then, everything kind of snowballed. Actually, when I was in forestry school in the Adirondacks, I would go study for biology tests at the library, which actually overlooked a lake in the Adirondacks. It was beautiful, beautiful school.
Oh,
And yeah, you could lock your shotguns up in the gym, under the gym, and the university police would come let you grab your shotgun. You could just walk off campus and go grouse hunting. I mean, it was
yeah.
stuff
Oh,
that
that's
stuff
incredible.
that's very rare now in universities, right? But I would walk the stacks in the library, and I found Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. And I was in
Yep.
forestry, and I was working for the timber industry, and that book changed my life, and it basically turned me into a wildlife person in general. And what's crazy is if you look at where I ended up working and who I ended up working with, I'm not going to detail who it was and everything, but like um, Aldo Leopold was Albert Hochbaum's advisor. Hochbaum was Harold Prince's advisor at Michigan, and so on. I'm actually a direct academic descendant of Aldo Leopold, right? So talk
Oh,
about
that's
like
cool.
stroking someone's ego. That is just a
Yeah.
cool legacy, right? And I didn't know. I ended up in that later on when I was doing my postdoc at Mississippi State. And but these are like the connections that lead us down this road. So tell me from Steven's point how you got to that next step and then that next step, and how planned was it? Because mine wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I didn't see this podcast coming like 3 years ago. It just was like, oh, let's do this, and then it just grew its own tentacles. So sorry,
Yeah.
tell your
Yeah.
story, bud.
No, that's same deal. I've been really fortunate to, just meet some great people and make some good connections. And that's just, really led me down this path. A lot of it was, widely unplanned. Out of undergrad, I kind of trying to figure out what I was actually going to do with my life once I had that undergraduate degree. I knew I wanted to work in waterfowl. Actually, Dr. Kaminsky was one of the great. I sent him an email, and as a undergrad, he gave me a call, and we talked for probably 30, 40 minutes about career paths, and really a lot of respect to him for making that phone call and helping me along the way. Some great people at Ducks Unlimited that I got to just be connected with kind of by happenstance, and talking through grad school versus Fish and Wildlife Service versus Ducks Unlimited, and uh, really just wanted to go work out in the field and be a technician for a while longer. Got to work for Lisa Webb in Nebraska and Missouri. That led to good things. Ended up down here with Dr. Doug, really on a kind of forest inventory, bottomland hardwood food study that then rolled into a master's position just
and that's
based on.
and that's Doug Osborne at University of Arkansas at
Yes,
Monticello.
sir. Yeah,
Yep.
Doug Osborne at UAM, and rolled into a white front goose movement ecology project, really looking at timing of migration related to a survey that we used to do for the population up in the Canadian prairies, and then looking at some winter habitat selection stuff. So yeah, that was great. And then same kind of deal, wrapping up there. Was applying for kind of permanent positions, couple state agencies. Was thinking really hard about trying to end up in Washington or Oregon, working out there for the state. And then uh, Heath Hagee called and said, "Hey, we've got this doctoral project kicking off in Illinois, and think you'd be a great fit for it." And got a ton of respect for Heath, and
Mm-hmm.
knew there were a lot of good folks up there. So I ended up going there. It was really, I thought of it as a urban Canada goose project or a park goose project, but it ended up being way cooler than I ever imagined. I got to, that's a beauty of a PhD project. It's a little more
Didn't you find
self-guided.
didn't you find that these Canada geese were spending time on
Oh
rooftops
yeah,
in
yeah,
Chicago, right? These are the birds that used to come down to Crab Orchard. Are those Southern James Bay birds, or what are they? What population is
yeah,
that?
yeah. There are a few Southern James Bay, really kind of Western Hudson Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, these birds, I mean, staying in the city all winter long. We did some really neat kind of behavioral ecology things
Hmm.
using transmitters to assess behaviors and understand, the trade-offs between staying in the city, eating this really crummy, nutrient-poor grass all winter long versus spending the winter out in ag lands, in Indiana or parts of rural Illinois, feeding on corn. So lots of neat stuff there. Yeah,
Hmm.
figured out that rooftops close to Midway International Airport were one of the main drivers of risk to air traffic. So we had
That's
a bunch of geese
crazy.
flying from canals and city parks to these rooftops and flying
Yeah.
right across departure and arrival
Yeah.
paths of aircraft. So yeah, lots of neat stuff out of that. And then molt migration, which I think is still one of the coolest kind of waterfowl ecology phenomenons, is these city geese that literally would be eating croutons from people in the city, and then the next week would be up on Hudson Bay, molting and having to worry about polar bears and wolverines and all those things.
That's
So
wild.
really, the fact that these heavy urbanized geese can still make those incredible movements, and kind of go back to some of their ancestral historic behaviors.
Yeah, we got the same thing. We're trying to differentiate harvest of North Atlantic population from the local, Gulf course geese on Long Island, using morphology and stable isotopes. So usually you can take a feather from a bird and you can say, well, it molted it here, and so this is its origin. But the problem is there's those birds go way up around, up to Labrador and Newfoundland and molt. And so in their feather, they're gonna have the same signature as this North Atlantic population. So we can't use that to differentiate them. So then we got to go down to like bone marrow, right? Because bone marrow is a longer term signature and then should match up with where they're at locally. We're also going to run genetics with Phil Lovretsky's lab. We haven't found the funding for those samples yet, but we're going to do that because we think, there should be no intermixing of those molt migrants. But man, there's some people that are like, yeah, geese. Maybe we should just call all these white-cheeked geese and give up on these populations because there's maybe more funky stuff going on than we think. So we'll see if somehow any of these birds do, throw a weird genetic signature, like somehow there is some mixing. I don't think there should be, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Our temperate nesting, like our New York geese, and then you go into Ontario. I mean, you can count geese like pretty much all the way up to Ungava, where the Atlantic population comes from. And so what are they? What are they in between, right? And so I think the lines on some of this stuff might be blurring more. I don't know if you have that same sentiment, or you're like, no, these are definitely specific, distinct populations.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely more of a lumper, and some of that's we ran a little bit of genetics on some of the samples that really Brett Dorak, the student before me, took. And there were a lot of muddy signals. We had birds that, morphometrically should have been those subarctic breeders, and we had some temperate breeders that, morphometrically were shown as those subarctic, and we had some genetic mixing. We had some that, were partially assigned to one population versus the other. But yeah, lots of interesting things. And the other thing, I mean, just thinking through why they're, different sizes and those things, a lot of it's, resource competition and it's density dependent. And one of my questions has been, now that we have these really high densities in urban areas, are we actually seeing a shift in body size and really related to that nutritional quality? So are the urban Canada geese, kind of pushing towards those smaller sizes, while some of the rural nesting ones are still big, the 15-pound giants that all the Minnesotans always talk about.
Yeah, Jim LaFleur with or Leafler, however everybody likes to pronounce it, with Canadian Wildlife Service would always say, you could take a temperate nesting giant Canada goose and give it basically a horrible diet and make it tiny, and you could take a small Arctic goose and jam great nutrition at it and make it large. I mean, that nutritional input while those birds are growing makes a massive difference in what they end up looking like, and so everybody's like, oh, this is a little bird, it's a migrant, and I'm like, is it though? So it's muddier than what people think, and whatever. I mean, I still think we should run, if we know that these migrant populations are coming in, I don't think we should just say, hey, it's just a goose season and have at them, because we know when there's bad reproduction in the Arctic year after year after year, which has happened in some of these populations, that you can't just pound that adult population. And so to completely remove a migrant population because of mismanagement is still something that, I'm not on board with. But I guess the comment is it's muddier than what we think it is, but we should still probably manage them to some extent is populations, right?
No, I agree. And that's, that crab orchard wintering area, that was one of the few studies that's really showed effective harvest regulation on adult survival and harvest rates. Just because of the breeding ecology differences in geese compared to ducks, obviously you can impact Canada goose population via harvest. For sure. So
we beat the drum all the time of harvest doesn't matter, but that's like it's not an ultimate statement. It's more about ducks, and even that matters at some point, right? Like we know that, but it's not the lever that you need to pull for most species. But sea ducks and Canada geese, long-lived species, reproduce at a lower annual rate. You've got to really watch your harvest to a greater degree than the other ducks that reproduce, like bunnies. Like blue-winged teal. Like now we're going down to a shorter blue-winged teal season, and that's just dumb. Because we know,
Yeah.
like somebody showed up to a duck symposium one time and just said, just so everybody's aware, you can just shoot blue wings while they're here in the States, because just shoot them. Like, but nobody wants to see a truckload of blue winged teal because it's just not socially palatable. Like even as a hunter, I'm like, I don't want to see that, right?
Yeah.
But so we got to work on that harvest framework for blue wings, because the low population has nothing to do with the fact that we shot too many blue wings, and now we're going to reduce season, which is just reducing opportunity. It's doing nothing for the blue winged teal population, right? So that's a duck that reproduces. I say reproduces like bunnies, but I should just start saying reproduces like ducks, because when it's good, they boom, right? We got off on a tangent. I said this would be a little organic, Ryan, but no, it's on me too, man. We got to try to keep this to an hour. I could go on for far too long, and this duck world. It's like when you go to the duck symposium, it's like, how do you talk to the 300 people in the room? You run out of, like, you come in the door nowadays and everybody, and you get you can't even go get your first drink of the night because you've run into 10 people and have these ongoing conversations. So I want folks to understand that Ryan is now welcomed into this big waterfowl world, and it's a great community of people with hearts in the right place, and very inspired, passionate. Come from a duck hunting background yourself, Ryan? It looks, either you picked it up later or you are, because you got all this stuff going on in the background.
Yep. Nope. Was fortunate to grow up in a family that could support that addiction. That my father kind of fostered that love for waterfowl hunting. But grew up in eastern Iowa along the Mississippi, and I thought it was a big deal for us to go and shoot our 2 wood ducks back then.
Yeah.
That's what I lived for all summer long. That created a mixed relationship with football and other sports athletics, because I really just wanted to be out in the marsh and on the river, and bow fishing during the summer, duck hunting during the fall, and then eventually taking pictures in the spring. But grew up enjoying the outdoors and spending a lot of time outside, and that's really what kind of shaped me those early years, getting yelled at for forgetting things, and having to wake up early and plan out hunting trips. So
my dad would just pull out, like, as a kid, you might, you forget certain things, right? And we'd pull out of the driveway, and I'd be like, oh, I forgot my shell belt. He's like, well, you're not shooting today. It was like, well, you don't have shells. Yeah, I got my shells. Where are yours? Right? It taught me responsibility. Right? He wasn't gonna. We'd be like just out of the driveway, and he's like, nope, it's your fault. Like, you're just a little kid. Like, you got sleepies in your eye, and just trying to make your way in the world, barely muddling along, going through puberty. Like, it was bad, right? So your dad inspired you somewhat, but then mentors to me were absolutely critical. I named some of them to you previously: Scott Petrie, Guy Baldessari, Dave Ankney, and then lots of people with DU and Delta Waterfowl as well. And then the Atlantic Flyway folks that I worked with for a few years really kind of shaped who I am. But who in the profession would you say, was really that strong mentor? Was it one person, or was it a series of them?
It was a whole series, whole community of them. So like I said earlier, I really was fortunate to kind of get into the Arctic goose community early on with Dr. Ray Alasauskas. Kyle Drake was kind of leading the banding efforts up there while I was there, and then rolled over to Alaska, got to work with emperor geese, white fronts, loons, some eider work, but with Joel Schmutz, Jerry Hupp, and then the late Tom Fondell. They were really huge. Joel blows me away how much he was able to publish, just year after year after year, just super productive researcher, and just all of them, just really quality individuals, cared about young resource professionals. Really, we're great kind of advisors and mentors coming up. And then, my graduate advisors, Dr. Doug Osborne at UAM, Heath, and then Mike Ward, as well up in Illinois. He's not just a waterfowl guy. He's more of a broader avian ecologist, dips his toes in all sorts of things. But just really great people that, kind of showed me how to be a good person and a good scientist, good researcher, and really care about their students and, helping those students get to the next level, or reach wherever they're hoping to go. So,
Yeah, that one of the things that where I grew was, my ethical responsibility to my field and to the birds themselves, and really trying to always have that ethical high ground, right? And not, because there are, in any profession, there are some, I don't know that we have bad actors, but there's some people that kind of, maybe blur the lines sometimes. And I've always tried to stay, way above that. The podcast kind of mentality, here at the Fowl Weather Podcast is that, like, we don't blurt stuff out. We really work to make sure that the information we're providing is as high quality as possible. And I think pretty much everybody in the waterfowl world is doing that. And that's one of the things we try to teach is, like, the reason that we're successful in the waterfowl world. I mean, you saw the State of the Birds document, right? That just came out.
Yep.
That comes out once every
Yep.
3 years. Is it Audubon and Cornell, I think, that do that, I believe.
yes, sir.
In combination, along, I think, with, like, Partners for Flight. And it shows, waterfowl doing substantially better than other birds. And that's based on the hard work by the folks that trained you, and then you yourself as the next generation, And I mean, we've got bumps and bruises in there, though. That's the thing. I would never want people to look at the state of the birds and go, okay, well, we should just focus on forest birds and grassland birds. I mean, I think we need to do all those other things better, right? Shorebirds, grassland birds, forest birds, which are genuinely plummeting, but also keep doing the the duck stuff that we've been doing all along. That's my fear is abandon. I think we did at one point in academia, at least, we abandoned one thing for the other. And I don't think that was, put us in a good place. I think you came along at a point, again, where we were ramping up these university programs, and you're kind of a product of that return, to those days. So I think I'm going through a little bit of lessons here. Go ahead, Ryan. I apologize. I tend to ramble.
Yeah, you're good. No, it is. It's almost like there's been a second revival. Fredrickson, Kaminsky. I mean, the lab you're a product of. It's really pretty incredible. The student output and the professionals that came out of that program. Really, it seems like there's been a resurgence led by you all, your, I guess, generation era, to train these new young people my age. I'm getting old too. I'm with Matt Dyson. I'm 34 and I'm starting to feel old. But
hey,
I appreciate being considered a young professional.
I'm turning 51, so I go with anybody 10 years younger than me is still young, because I don't know. I turned 40. I started to feel old when I turned 50. My turkey hunting, everything seemed to slow down a little bit, and I'm a little afraid of what 60 looks like, honestly. So believe me, Ryan, you're still young. You got a lot of years there, but
I appreciate it.
But the thing that I'm finding, and you probably found this too, when you went down this path, it wasn't difficult to find a job. And what I'm finding is that when we produce really high quality students through ESF in Syracuse, that's the College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse, New York. It's right next to Syracuse University, but separate, a state school, if people aren't aware of it. When we produce high quality students, they get jobs, right? Like, there is a need for that. I just gave a talk at Mississippi State University, and the head of their department asked, because I kind of promoted some of the training the next generation of waterfowl and wetlands scientists, conservationists, and managers. And the question from the department head was, are we overloading the workforce now with folks with this expertise? And my comment is no. We still, I think, are in a little bit of a deficit. And I think we've got to continue to pump people out to fill these great positions. And so I think, you're a product of that, Ryan.
Yeah. And that's really this role here. So now as director of the Five Oaks Ag Research and Education Center, I mean, our big push is conservation, education, and research. And that education component, we've got youth education, but also these graduate students that we're working to train to be, science-based land managers. So I kind of look at it, we have a lot of waterfowl managers that come from a farming background that know the equipment, know their chemicals, know how to farm, And then we have these students coming out of undergrad that have this great ecological knowledge, but no way to actually apply that, at any sort of scale to really benefit conservation. That's, I mean, like we've talked about, habitat.
Yep.
And all across the board. So down here, we're really focused on, doing some really intensive moist soil management, managing bottomland hardwood forests to ensure their health. But one of the things I realized, and it's opened my eyes, same deal, trying to get students jobs and, worrying about those kind of things. And it's a huge responsibility. But we're working to train these students up to get their boots dirty, get their hands dirty, actually getting out here, doing the habitat management and the things that it takes to provide good waterfowl management on the landscape. I really think we still need those people in these natural resources agencies and private lands and these non-governmental organizations. So,
yeah. And so we haven't really gone into, because I'm just assuming folks know what Five Oaks is and, who started that and where, what's the totality of Five Oaks, if you want to kind of put that in a nutshell for the listeners.
Yeah. We probably should have started there earlier.
That's on me. I just kind of go, sideways all the time on here.
Yeah, we got going early. Yeah. So Five Oaks, the nonprofit, was really kind of born out of a duck hunting lodge. So Mr. George Dunklin started Five Oaks as kind of a unique hunting operation here near Stuttgart, Arkansas. Really, we're a Humphrey address, where we're just southwest of Stuttgart.
Yep.
A little bit, but really started to provide really high quality, mostly timber hunting opportunities for hunters from kind of around the world. We're unique. We pretty much have the same group every year. So we're not members. We're not really commercial or open. We don't have open dates basically. But those hunters come in from all over the country. Really, all of them, lots of great people, have gotten to be really good friends, and they're now contributing to the nonprofit. So they have to pay for, the fair value of the stay, of the food, of the guided hunt, all that stuff. But everything on top of that's actually a contribution to the nonprofit. And that allows us to do the conservation work we're doing, the management, the research side of things. So working with UAM, we've got a contractual partnership with UAM. So we're a private nonprofit, but partnered with the University of Arkansas system. And then in education. So doing a lot of youth education, elementary school camps, really getting them out into the wetlands and just an appreciation for nature. And then the graduate education side of things that I mentioned briefly. We're here. We have about 5,500 acres that we manage primarily for waterfowl. Lots of bottomland hardwood forests. So that's really our main focus is bottomland hardwood forest health. Unfortunately, like we talked about, impounding of these forest changes in the kind of landscape hydrology, all sorts of things have really created a decline in bottomland hardwood forest health kind of across the board here in Arkansas, Mississippi, and down to Louisiana. So really heavily focused on those, focused on not just the value to mallards, but the whole ecosystem. And that's another thing I want to emphasize is talking about the decline in birds. Really, we've been single species focused for a long time, both in the breeding grounds and here in the South, and really healthy wetland ecosystems benefit just the whole swath of species that rely on them. So that's something we really try to emphasize here and educate.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about other ducks for a second. So, right, when you say duck around Stuttgart, you mean mallard, no matter what.
Yeah, the king.
But I tell you, this talk I gave at Mississippi State, and we've put some of these graphics up on our Facebook page too. Maybe you've seen them through the Fowl Weather podcast of the harvest of non-mallard ducks per hunter day. So that's like, divided by something that gives you a little bit of effort. And darn it, if those aren't going up. Right.
Yeah.
And so as our mallards ebb and flow or decline a little bit in their harvest, we're redirecting that towards other species. And, this is, it gives me faith because like Arkansas duck hunter numbers look like they're declining, at least residents. Right. And that's not cool. Yeah. And it's like, there's other stuff out there than a mallard. And if they're not going to show up on the regular frequency, and that's going to maybe because of food resources plus changes in weather. There's a lot of dynamics going on there. Right now, we do have a lower population, but this seems to be something that even when there's a high population, they're just not always showing up like folks would like them to. But really trying to change that, duck hunter perception that if it's not a mallard, it's not a duck would be, beneficial. Because I'm guessing y'all are catering to the whole suite of duck species from, I don't know, do you have any deep water to get the diving ducks really? Probably ringnecks, but probably not much other than that. It's mostly dabbling ducks, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a few reservoirs, and they're pretty much all sanctuary rest areas that we don't hunt, and it's mostly ringnecks in this vicinity, closer to the Arkansas River. Some of the big oxbow lakes will get some of the cool diving ducks, as I would say, the redheads and the canvasbacks. But for the most part, we're dealing in puddle ducks, dabblers, and we do a lot of moist soil management. Obviously, provide a great diversity of food sources, different natural seeds. We get to see a huge diversity of different species. A surprising number of widgeon, which we really don't harvest a lot of them. Same with pintail. There's all those funny memes about pintails thinking about coming to decoys and then not.
Oh my favorite. Like the first pass is the best, and then you try to work them, and you're like, you're gonna lose that battle, and they just circle higher and higher and then leave. My favorite is just to watch a newbie be like, "Oh, we're gonna get them," and I'm like, "No, you're not."
Yep. They'll break your heart.
Yeah, as opposed to a widgeon, which just seems to want to die, right? Like they are. When we shoot them here in central New York and they're getting ready to migrate and they're plump, we don't get the really nice plumed out drakes because they plume out later. North Carolina gets them in the Atlantic flyway. They shoot some really nice stud drake widgeon. But these, I'll put a widgeon on the grill, fat widgeon, like just about ready to migrate on the grill up against any full plucked mallard any day of the week. And they're absolutely spectacular. But sorry, it sounds like you got a good mix of things, but people are still a little greenhead purist in Five Oaks.
Yep. And that's, I mean, there is not much that is more beautiful than a good wad of mallards, just committing down through the treetops, through a little hole in the canopy. So it is an incredible experience, and it's something I'd never gotten to experience before moving down here for this position. It's incredible. There's a reason why people come to this part of Arkansas for the timber hunting.
Well, now you're going to get in trouble because that's the one thing that's happened is resident hunters have declined, non-residents have increased, and the sentiment towards that. So be careful with.
I get it. Tread lightly. I'll tread lightly.
Yeah. No, I get it. When our river around here floods, it's mostly like because the flood regimes change. So it used to be swamp white oaks and such, but it's changed. We don't have all the oak trees y'all have, like all the red oaks and things just don't exist up north. But it's really transitioned to like silver maple swamp, so it's not super useful. But we've had years where, some of my best timber hunting, oddly, has been in New York, which just sounds like the weirdest thing to people, right?
Yeah.
It was back in 1998 when mallard populations were really good in the East. And, I was still in college, forestry school at ESF, and I found this section of the river that had flooded out, some trees had fallen over. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to go in here, but we're not shooting at big groups because I don't want to scare them. I want to have like 2-3 days of these birds. I knew they were in there off the river, and it was a hike. It was like, it took us like an hour walking with decoys on our back to even get to it, right? And we get in there and sun comes up, and it's not like as much Arkansas where they come into the woods later. Like they were just coming off the big water and going right in to sit in the woods during the day. And I don't know, maybe there was food in there. I'm not sure what they were doing or just looking for refuge. But eventually we just started shooting into flocks of 200 birds. Like,
oh my goodness.
Because there's just gobs and gobs of birds, and they would come in through the trees, and then they would like kind of filter into the pockets on the side. And I'm like, and everybody's like, are we going to shoot at these things? And I'm like, I guess we kind of have to. And it was going to like, when you get mallards like that here, it's about ready to freeze up too. So it's not like you're going to have days and days. It's not like where you guys are at where it just doesn't freeze. Like, you shoot them for 2-3 days when they ball up like that right on the ice line, and then they're gone 2 days later like you froze out. So you might as well, I'm like, let's just shoot these damn things, at some point. So, no, I get it. I get it. So a little back to the young professional portion of this, like critical life lessons learned today, that might aid somebody else that is, Come on, man. You can be a mentor yourself. Somebody else
Yeah.
moving up in the ranks. So what did you see? What did you learn that would help someone, like if an undergrad was listening to this, what's the advice that you give them to move into the waterfowl world?
Yeah, I mean, starting from early on in your studies, treat it like a job. I mean, it takes a lot of science, lots of math, it takes a lot of thinking to do this even remotely well. And you got to treat it like a full-time job, and seek out new relationships, new people, new connections. Like I said earlier, that's really what got me to this point. Was I was able to kind of move around and connect with a bunch of really neat people that really helped me along the way. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. If you want to just, if you want to stay in your hometown your whole life, this is probably a really difficult career to do that. If you're willing to, even if you might end up back close to your hometown, but you got to move. I mean, you got to go to where the opportunities are, and you got to, gain new experiences, and that'll really, really help shape out who you are and make you more effective.
Was it, so how far when you went to Stevens Point were you from home?
5.5 hours, five and a
Yeah.
half, 6 hours.
Did it feel like was there anxiety over that, or were you the type of person that was okay with that?
I was great with that. I was raised in a family that, I mean, very, very loving, but very comfortable with distance, pretty independent. So yeah, that was never even ever really a concern for me. And I know, that's different for all sorts of people.
It is, and that's where I'm going to go with it for other folks that are on here that are like, yeah, I might not be that way. I mean, my father took a teaching position 1 hour away from, the family farm, went to school, university 30 minutes from home. And, my brother taught university in my hometown when he got finished his degree in Buffalo. And so between my junior and senior years, so you started really early with this type of stuff. I didn't really get into this because I was doing forestry school and then found ducks kind of later in life. Between my junior and senior year in forestry school, I took a job with Delta Waterfowl, and I just begged my way in with Frank Rower to work in Eglin. If everybody's familiar, there's going to be people on here that are going to be familiar with Eglin, North Dakota. Yep. And the house that Frank owns, maybe he still owns it, I think, out there. And I don't know, but
I don't want to misspeak, but I think there might be some people in kind of my cohort that now own it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not sure on that. Yeah, but yeah, so stayed there.
Yeah, and my wife was there too. So Jen, when she started out and went and worked, so I did 1 week. I begged my way in, and Frank's like, I guess I can hire you for a month because I could get there earlier. So I worked 2 weeks in North Dakota and 2 weeks in Minnedosa, Manitoba, and then drove home. And it was probably like the scariest thing I'd ever done because I probably hadn't gone any further than like Ohio from my hometown. But it was worth it. And then, a year later after I graduated, I got a job in South Dakota, and I had a little Ford Escort and a giant stinky Chesapeake and a canoe like tied to the top of that thing with like just old like foam mattress to like buffer it, like no real car top anything. And it was just ratchet strapped down, and I'm driving across the country. Yeah. And I was scared. Like, honestly, but it's the best thing I ever did. And then I just kept chasing, jobs everywhere. And if you want to work with ducks, not only should you go east and west and see it, and I still haven't done enough Pacific flyway stuff. I've done Central Mississippi, Atlantic, right? Pacific flyway is like a whole nother beast, right? Because you're training, like the plants are just totally different. Like I vacationed out there, and I'm like, you go walk anywhere in California, you're like, what is this? Like the birds are different. The plants are different. It's like, it's a very strong transition. But go east-west to see the different flyways, and definitely go north-south, right? That's one of the things I always tell folks they really, really need to do. I wouldn't be the person I am today, and you wouldn't either if you hadn't done the Midwest thing growing up and then also the Southern thing that you're doing now. It just gives you so much perspective, I think. So I'd encourage,
absolutely,
folks to do that. Even duck hunters, right? I'm like, I think this is why DU does the prairie experience thing with their funders, right? Because they're like, you need to go to the prairies and see it. And I really encourage duck hunters, just go in the summer, go on a fishing trip, right? The fishing is amazing in the prairies on these lakes. So if you don't feel like you just want to go birding and look at ducks on potholes and see what that landscape is, we'll find a way to go fishing and then mix some of that stuff in.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Yeah.
think people truly appreciate the prairies or what it looks like or really how wet it still is. Like, even though it's dry,
Yeah.
there's water everywhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
anyhow.
Right. Right. Yeah.
A little
No,
comment on the travel thing and how it's helped you grow too, Ryan.
No, and I absolutely agree that that was eye-opening experiences for me going up to the prairies, spending time up in southern Manitoba, kind of growing up, and it's really so easy to get narrow focus and just think about what we're seeing right in front of us. I think that's why a lot of the conversation has kind of been led the direction it has is we're so focused on what we see, what's right in front of us, and taking a step back to those declines in grassland nesting birds. We even talk about quail down here. I mean, those species aren't hunted. Those were not shot out of existence. Those were not shot down to these low population levels. It's habitat driven, and unless we go actually see that habitat and understand the whole annual cycle and what's influencing that, it's really easy to kind of lose focus on what's the most important for these populations. But yeah,
we know how to make quail, by the way, right?
Yeah.
You can probably grow a quail population if you want. It's literally like, how much space do we have to go do that? And
yeah, right.
That's a landscape change thing. That's where I'm afraid we're headed with ducks, and I hope we're not there yet. But I feel like unless we get our what together, we could be headed there. And I feel like that's a lot of the frustration of waterfowl hunters is like, we say it's habitat, but then it feels impossible to make sure that it's sustained in perpetuity. Yeah. It always feels like a losing game, and I feel like that's frustrating. And then people want to pull at other threads, like changing bag limits and seasons and other types of stuff that aren't really the solution. It just feels like a lever that it's a feel good lever, but it's not going to work probably, right?
Right. Yeah, I'd never want to give the illusion that I'm comfortable with where waterfowl populations are, and I think everything's hunky dory. I think there's obviously, especially lately, some incredible habitat loss on the prairies. We're at huge risk of losing even more of that. The permanent changes, the tile drainage, that means even when we do have rains return to the prairies, these wetlands aren't going to come back or function the same way. That's a huge concern. Then on the wintering grounds, I mean, the kind of energetic landscape has changed in an incredible way over the last few decades here in Arkansas and Mississippi and other parts of the country. Is we just don't have the food that we used to. I mean, there is rice harvest is so early. It's gotten so efficient. Kind of our post-harvest management has changed. Lately, we're seeing even less and less kind of winter flooding across the landscape. That makes a difference. And there's I'm kicking myself. I don't remember if it was a paper out of Wiegman's lab or maybe Thomas Ricky's. But I mean, there's a direct link to waterfowl population productivity and winter habitat. Those carryover effects are very real.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest motivators for me being down here is understanding that what we're doing down here absolutely is influencing waterfowl populations.
For sure.
We need to fight for it. And of course, waterfowl hunting. I'm a waterfowl conservationist hunter. I understand conservation through use and the importance of these hunters, both public and private. And I want to ensure that's here. I want to ensure that history and people are enjoying duck hunting in Arkansas for a long time to come. And without some attention to those changes, it stands to change in a major way, I think.
Yeah, amen is what I can say there. That's felt like some Gospel of Ryan going on. I do. First of all, my head net fell apart. So if folks heard my dogs barking in the background, the FedEx guys here, I got in a new head net. And when I was turkey hunting in Mississippi, I usually wear like a fleece vest, but it got hot on the last day. So I wear a fleece vest and I have a foldable like foam turkey decoy that I jam up underneath. I don't even have the sticks for it. I left the sticks in the woods a long time ago, just doing run and gun. And so I just literally find a stick in the woods that I break off and use for the damn decoy on each day or like one season. I'm like the hobo turkey hunter, right? And because I run and gun and I'm not going to carry a sack of like hard decoys around. It's just like this cheap foam thing that's just enough to distract the turkey for a second while I have to move when it comes in range to shoot it. Well, I had it just like stuffed in my belt loop, and yeah, it's gone. It's somewhere in the national forest in Mississippi. So I also have a new turkey decoy at the front. So I do apologize if there were dogs barking in the background, but this is the home office in Jack's Reef at the farm, and I can't do it. I can't control everything. My wife hasn't come and yelled at me yet, so because we all have we actually have the day off, right? So appreciate a good Friday. So happy Easter to everybody as well.
Yeah.
Happy Easter. But so you really hit on some good points there. Is that the landscape really matters? It matters on the wintering grounds. It matters during migration, more so in the spring than the fall, really. And then the breeding grounds. And when all those buttons are firing, then we have a good population, right? And one segment can make up for the other. Obviously, the breeding grounds really matter. But we definitely need that water and that food on the landscape. Now, what I've been saying, and I've heard from folks, is if you had sanctuary and you had food last year, you had ducks, because we heard a lot of people complaining that there's no ducks, right? The where are the ducks thing is really a comment. How'd y'all do last year? Was it reasonable?
Yeah, it was. We had a very reasonable season. Sorry, my little mutt was yelping.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah,
you're good.
Last season was certainly interesting. We're really blessed to have a good chunk of property here and be able to provide sanctuary areas that we try to reduce our traffic, not go into, and not hunt. And I'll say we caught ducks early. I mean, we had ducks showing up around Halloween, mallards showing up around Halloween. We were able to keep those really through the season. Obviously, they're trading in and out. Individuals are trading in and out, but really we were able to kind of keep and kind of baby what I feel like was largely the same group of ducks through the season. And our December was pretty tough. It got pretty slow and difficult there, and a lot of that was weather dependent, warmer weather, low wind, those kind of things. And then really we had a fantastic January. I was kind of surprised. We did have a big lack of acorns in the woods, so still discussing why that is. I think some of that had to do with some late freezes and limbs breaking. Some of it had to do with the drought stress on them last year. We had a lot of aborted acorns in our woods, but we really didn't have the red oak acorn production like we really hoped for. We couldn't find a single viable red oak acorn on property. So I've got a little greenhouse, and we're trying to get going on some different tree experiments and looking at differences in elevation. But we couldn't find viable red oak acorns on property. And because of that, this is some of the transmitter work that I'm doing, working with Mackenzie Wyrick and Doug's lab and a few other folks. But the ducks were not in the woods like they usually are. I think I shot them in the woods one day when they really wanted to be there. Otherwise, we were just relying on those sanctuary areas and ducks kind of trading around, and we could trick enough to come into the woods to have decent hunts. But it was not like it is some years down here. So that was really interesting and highlighted the importance of, having a diverse kind of suite of habitat and food resources.
Yeah. So your moist soil stuff really mattered. Yeah.
Oh, it really carried us for sure. One of the other things that this transmitter did is really kind of emphasizing is, the sanctuary protection from hunting, but also kind of the structural component to that sanctuary. So we're seeing really high selection of these areas that people kind of typically think of worthless: reservoirs, bunbush sloughs, those kind of things, places that these ducks can just get out of the way, probably eat some invertebrates and maybe some moist soil seed, but largely just getting out of the elements, resting, being able to be protected from bald eagles and other aerial predators and save resources. And
there's a lot of times
that I think really helped us.
Yeah, a lot of times I think people forget how mild some of the weather gets at times in these latitudes to the south, and that ducks just want a place to go. If they're fat enough, they might be losing weight, actually, right? If they know where their food is on a daily basis, and they don't have to, they're not going to migrate anywhere else. They're at the terminal location. They're not going to carry fat they don't need, right? If the food's predictable, and then they've got these places to loaf. There's lots of places that ducks just want to go sit, especially once they're paired, right? I put this image up of a cherry bark oak falling down in the woods. It's a hen and a drake mallard sitting next to it, and I asked my students, what are these ducks doing? And they tell me everything under the sun. I'm like, no. The answer is nothing. They're doing nothing. They're or the other answer is surviving, right? Because at some point you just need to make it to the spring migration. And so you need to provide those places for those ducks too. And I think that's from a public land hunting perspective, we have to remember that sometimes ducks just want a place to exist and not. It doesn't need anything other than that. And we do have to provide that to them in space and time to some extent. Yeah. So sounds like you guys are doing a good job of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the scariest narratives to me is there's a huge body of mostly public land hunters that think these sanctuaries are ruining duck hunting for them. They don't understand the importance on the landscape scale and are saying, why can't we hunt those 2 days out of the week? Well, the only reason those ducks are even in this region is because of those sanctuary areas, places that they feel safe and can go without being molested.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get yelled at again by folks in Arkansas, and I don't agree with this like everywhere. I think there does need to be like big, wide open spaces for folks to run their boats and everything. But ducks need a break in some places, and I even locally on these wide open state lands, if 100 ducks build up on a moist soil wetland, and I see it at 10 o'clock that morning, I'm gonna go shoot them that day because if I don't, somebody else is going to. Yeah. And I think that, these ducks need a break to some extent. And if you ask hunters, what do they want? They don't want to drive more than an hour. They want to see ducks and have the opportunity to shoot them, and they don't want competition. But then they want no regulations that enable that to happen, right? And I'm like, why does every single duck club, like Five Oaks, I guarantee you, does break days, has refuge areas, doesn't just hunt every single day in every single hole, and you shoot well. So then as soon as we transition that ideology to public lands, people are like, no, stay out of my business. And I'm like, there's a tweener there that probably works. I'm going to get yelled at about this again from folks, but but I'm a very big proponent of some type of hunt management system that's put in place by folks that are duck hunters, that have done studies, that understand what type of pressure it can sustain. Because what we need to do is provide habitat for the ducks, and that means they have to have time and space to either just rest or get to their food resources that you've produced. And then we also need to provide a quality hunt for duck hunters where they don't have to drive too far to get away from people. They see and have the opportunity to harvest ducks, and they don't have another guy always in their duck hole when they go to show up. So I'll leave it there. I think there's a method here to this madness.
Yep. I agree. And, having more public land would alleviate a lot of those problems. And
for sure.
I give Game and Fish down here a lot of props. They have to deal with a lot of unhappy people, and they've done some great things. So I think Raft Creek's a shining example of, kind of managing the hunting pressure and the experience a little bit better. And we see really high harvests in that area. They're thinking about these things, and managing people is the hardest part of natural resource management, hardest part of conservation. So I don't envy those folks at all.
No, not one bit. Hey, we're going to wrap up, Ryan, but I try to end by giving advice, but I feel like you gave me more advice than I could even give to you. We all learn from each other. My comment, and I think I said this to Katrina Terry on the last one too, is, stay positive, right? Because the pessimistic, the doom and gloom kind of attitude towards what we do is defeatist. And environmentally, where we're headed with things ain't always great, right? But if you claim defeat on the front end, you've already lost. And so I'm always like, get up each morning, put your best foot forward, do the best work you can do, keep training those students, really applaud the education component of what you are doing, and never lose that passion for duck hunting. And we didn't talk about your dogs, but you got some bumpers back there too. So take care of your family, be good to your neighbor, be good to the ducks, and carry on, my friend. Appreciate you, Ryan.
Amen. No, appreciate it, Dr. Jim.
All right. Have a good one, man.